And you may be going to church, you may be getting ready to step on out for a nice day. The weather's beautiful outside, but now it's time to jump in the rotation. Well, everyone, I'm your executive director, Christopher Connell, and coming live to you from the DC area. We have our studio back in the Tampa, Florida, Ybor City to be exact, right on 7th Avenue at Chillum Glass Gallery, Hemp and Mushroom Dispensary. Our deputy director, Carlos, is there holding things down as our in-house studio engineer. And we have a very special guest joining us today. We haven't seen him in about 6 months. And it's been a wild ride since then. It's Congressman Maxwell Frost. Congressman, how are you doing this morning?
Doing well. I appreciate y'all having me on this morning.
It is an honor to have you on as a candidate and now to see you as the actual congressman representing Central Florida. Just fantastic ride. And, we were just sharing an anecdote before the show started. The other day, both you and I were at the same action in front of the Supreme Court protesting, ensuring that student debt cancellation becomes a reality for so many folks. And I was just admiring how many fans that you have now, just being swarmed, especially by younger folks. People are looking up to you and look at you as a role model, and so the first question has to be, how does that make you feel? The pressure, does it change how the way you got to approach things? Does Congressman Frost and candidate Frost, obviously two different people, so, now you have handlers and such. So, just tell us how it is with the additional change.
Yeah, definitely. Well, it definitely, I'm still getting used to everything. Right. And, the thing about it is it's not just a journey for me. It's a journey for my family. It's a journey for my partner. It's a journey for, people around me. And so we like kind of collectively are figuring it out. And look, it's not like I'm not no like Taylor Swift out, and it's crazy. And it's not like the Beatles going to America. But depending on where I'm at, there will be a good amount of people come up and want to chat. And I actually I love meeting people. So the fact that it's giving me the opportunity to meet a lot of people. I love to hear where people are from. I love to like nerd out about, find like a commonality and kind of nerd out about it with a random person. It's like something I like to do. But I'm still getting used to everything, and the schedule is just insane. I thought the campaign schedule was insane, which it is. It's a different kind of insane, right? Because on the campaign, you're working ungodly hours, but you have one goal: win, and like you're doing everything to win. And then on this side of things, you have many competing priorities, right? Like my campaign's still running. We're doing year-round organizing work. We're figuring out how do we speak about, and what do we do about our fascist governor and what's going on in this state. Then you have, the legislation that we're pushing through. Then you have, creating good relationships with my colleagues. Then you have running a good office at home. And, there's just like a million. And then I have all my little projects I'm trying to get started. So, there's just a lot of things that are competing priorities. And what I'm getting used to is really being able to delegate things to our team and like give someone a whole thing to own. You know what I mean? And not knowing exactly what's going on day to day. So yeah, either way, honestly, still, I don't have it figured out yet at all. I speak with people who have been there for a long time. They're still figuring it out, but definitely been a
Well, Congressman, I just want to ask, moving. Oh, that looks like you got something going on in the studio there.
Oh, yeah. The next one, the mics are muted.
No, they're not. The mics are definitely muted, guys.
Mics are not muted.
We can hear everything y'all doing. So, but Congressman, you mentioned something about criticizing the governor, and I know, one, people probably want to, and I've experienced it. When you're younger, people want to talk down to you, almost like give you orders. And one of them has been, we've seen in the media, they're telling you not to talk bad about Governor Ron DeSantis. How does that make you feel, especially as the sole representative of your entire generation in our American legal system?
Talk about a Sisyphean challenge.
Yeah. Well, what I found early on, I think we're starting to see people change their tone a little bit about it, which I think is great. And if I had anything to do with that, that's great. But like a few months ago, when DeSantis started this, I mean, someone argue he's been doing it for a long time, and he has been. But you do have to admit, like in the past 3 to 4 months, maybe like 6 months, it's been an insane barrage of just like an authoritarian government in this state like we haven't seen before. And so we had to take a step back and figure out like how do we address this? What can I as a congressman do about this? I don't have any executive powers. I can push. So we take a step back. We figure out, okay, well, we can push the administration to look into it. We can be vocal about it in the national media and on the House floor and in committees, and we can organize locally. And that's really what we came up with, was those four things that we can do to be active and valuable and an asset in this time where the governor's abusing his powers to silence marginalized communities and people who disagree with him, and then not work on the issues that working class people need him to be working on. And so at the beginning of the whole thing, when I started you know when we were just take a step back and we go, wow, this is just he's becoming very like he's becoming fascist in in his role and what he's doing. We did have a lot of people reach out and say like, hey, you shouldn't use that word, it's a little too um what do you call it, it's just a little too forward and too much and hyperbolic.
Euphemistic, yeah.
Yeah, and number one, I think it's just funny because the Republican Party here has been calling Democrats all types of words for a long time and putting us next to pictures of like you've seen, terrorists and all, like it's just the craziest things. And all I do is use a real definition of what he's doing. And people were just, and I think it just goes to show our party isn't as aggressive as we need to be sometimes. And look, it's not about, oh, he called us a name, we're going to call him a name. I encourage you to look up the definition of fascism, then pull up a Google search, type in Ron DeSantis actions, and then look at the list of things he's been doing. So I'm really just defining. I'm not like being hyperbolic at all. But either way, we see a lot of other people starting to use that word. And to be clear, it's more than just about a word. I'm not trying to like get everyone to use the word. I just want everyone to be very vocal and forward about what's going on here, and that it's anti-American. It's not freedom. It's not liberty. It's not all the things that he, holds up. Patriotism is more than like bald eagle, beer, and flag. It's about like our actual freedoms and liberties. And so I'm trying to get that across.
Well, it's it reminds me of something that was said on the 2018 campaign trail about Governor DeSantis, and it was like he may not be racist, but the racists definitely believe he's racist. And I mean, the amount of hate that we've seen, come to the light since he's taken hold. I mean, there are literal Nazis in Orlando and Jacksonville that have been spurred. I mean, they're projecting swastikas on top of buildings, and they're dropping their banners from interstates and highways. I mean, these folks, they're harassing people at the Daytona 500. I mean, this is real in Florida. These are actual hate groups on the ground in our home state that feel motivated, that they have basically a political shield, if you will. I mean, that's messed up on so many levels.
Yeah,
It is. And I mean,
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, dude. But I agree with you, Congressman Frost, that when you said that we're just not as aggressive as we once were or as we need to be, I think that's very, very important. And especially for like people in the marijuana activism movement. I mean, there was a point in time when, I was iffy about whether I wanted to go into the cannabis industry because it was like, you had to spend a year in jail as a rite of passage in order to like be reputable as like a dispensary owner in California. Like there was a point in time where like you could face some real consequences, and there were some badass motherfuckers that went out and faced them and knocked them down and did what we need to do. And now we're here just tiptoeing around each other in many ways. And I think Trump and DeSantis got where they are today just because of what big dicks they are.
Yeah, I mean, no, I mean, yeah,
They don't have big dicks; is that they are big dicks.
No,
right?
no,
Are-
they have
That's
small
funny to get a
penises,
qualification there.
but the whole thing is a dick.
Well, here's my thing, and Congressman, I still want to call you Max. It's just like, I'm older. What can I say? Anyways, Congressman, you
Gary, you put some respect on his name. It's
Yeah,
Congressman Frost now.
yeah. Well, see, Carlos and the Congressman have something in common. I don't think it's the fact that both of you had relatives that were in the Buena Vista Social Club, but I think something along those lines. You're both basically of Cuban ancestry.
Yeah.
And here's what I'm wondering: as DeSantis continues his evolution, becoming the new version of Castro minus the communism.
For real.
How is it that they could that the Cuban population in Florida can still support him when they realized the reason that they flew here was not just because of the communism, but because of the restraints that Castro put on their social and cultural lives?
Yeah.
yeah, this is a great point, and like this is like part of the thing that Democrats need to be doing is, since my mom got here from Cuba in the like, a long time ago,
Before the pandemic, yeah.
yeah, and conservatives have really been dominating Spanish radio in Miami, and immediately off the boats, off the planes, feeding information to these Cubans that come from Cuba to escape something, really equating Democrats to what they just escaped. And now we actually see a governor who is actually like being acting like a dictator, acting like Castro, like you said, infringing on civil rights liberties, taking over boards, closing small businesses, changing schools, all this. And that I don't think that connection is necessarily being made. Am I saying we need to do ads that say he's Castro? I mean, I don't know what the answer is, like, but I know broadly the one of the solutions here is we need to equate him to what folks are scared of. And that's part I have this like theory, a huge reason why many Cubans are skewing now more and more conservative. It has nothing to do with ideology. I think if you sat down with a lot of these folks and you went down, I don't want to say nothing to do, but broadly, if you sit down with these folks and you go through issue by issue, especially on social or especially on economic issues or things like SNAP benefits, creating a country where everyone's needs are met, I think you'd find that most Cubans, especially folks in Miami, want that. But what happens is that there's a difference between policy and politics. And DeSantis has done an expert job at separating the two things. And I think Florida's a great case study in this. There was just a UNF poll that came out that it had DeSantis and President Biden in a head-to-head match in Florida. DeSantis wins by a few points. Then the same poll asked the same people questions on ballot initiatives, very progressive ballot initiatives, things like codifying abortion, recreational marijuana, etc. It was like 4 or 5 of them. Each one of them, over 70% of the same voters said yes. So in policy, it feels like, I would say our state's a lot more progressive, but in politics, when you have someone like DeSantis who separates the two things and focuses on these culture war issues and all this, people gravitate towards that as well, and they at the same time. So there's just a lot of work we have to do is bridging that again and telling the story of policy and how it impacts people's day-to-day life. And again, I don't have all the answers, but there's just an observation I've made.
I feel part of the reason why it's so hard to really give an answer to that is because it starts off very illogical, and if I could just explain, if you end up fleeing a country, right, because your rights aren't are in trouble, and you risk your life to come to a different country to escape that and to receive freedom, right, there's a certain amount of trauma that ensues there, right? And trauma, unfortunately, just it leaves people open, leaves you open to be taken advantage of. And that's exactly what the Republicans do. They use this rhetoric that is specifically designed to take advantage of that, and it just fits so well with the Cuban rhetoric that it's hard for Cubans to disagree. And I think you're right. I think when I sit down and I talk to a family member, a Cuban family member, they're 100% agree with policy. Like my parents do this like by the way, my dad was not excited that you were on the show today. But they do this whole thing where like they're juggling this marijuana activist son and this lesbian daughter, and they're voting for DeSantis, and they're saying that they love their grandkids, but like their grandkids, if they were in school right now, couldn't talk about their daughter, and it just doesn't make sense. There's a certain amount of cognitive dissonance there that is sprouted from the trauma that Castro put in place in these Cuban Americans.
Exactly.
Ron DeSantis disenfranchising marginalized people every day.
Well, Carlos, I got to speak on that because my own uncle on my mom's side, was a very staunch Republican.
Gary Cano's Cuban too.
Yeah, but I'm talking about the white side of my family. My white uncle, not my Cuban one, is it was a very staunch Republican for many years. Is a trial lawyer and such, and my cousin, when she came out, it changed his politics. In 2016, he was not a Trump supporter or a Trump voter, and so for some people, it eventually will click that your politics hurts your family if you're voting against yourself. But for some people, it's a longer process, and your parents are just kind of going through that process. But until they see, it becomes real, and sadly, I hate to see this, but until they see a Republican policy put you out of business or put their grandkids at risk, that's when it becomes real for them.
Yeah, that's 100% true, and that's why I'm trying to figure out ways to talk about everything that's been going on that really hits, because you have a lot of people sitting at home who are watching what's going on, and they're saying, "Well, it seems off, but like I don't know what that has to do with me when it comes to LGBTQ plus people or trans kids. I don't have a trans kid, you know what I mean? It's not clicking." Or like them taking him taking over New College, right? I never heard of New College. Like, what does that have to do with me? Black history. Yeah, I don't want my kid feeling uncomfortable, right? And so that's DeSantis is playing on the margins here, where there's a large group of like working class people who are. I think there's a smaller group that are supportive. I think there's a larger group that's indifferent, and that's the place where we need to really work in messaging people and explaining that, of course, number one, we're all connected, right? We're all part of this grand mosaic of humanity. My success is your success is my success. We should want all of us to be free. Unfortunately, that message doesn't hit with everybody, right? And so we have to think about, how do we bring it home for them specifically? How does this relate to their family? And like one of the arguments is like, as he focuses on trans kids and Black history, guess what he's not focusing on? Raising wages, affordable housing.
How about the triple property insurance rates in Florida for people?
Exactly. And so finding the way to not dismiss what's going on now and still go hard for our queer family, for Black folks, for immigrants, but also figuring out at the end of this, how do we connect it to a lot of these folks who feel like they're not associated or it doesn't affect them, because it's just the fact of the matter that a lot of people feel that way.
I tend to think that DeSantis' immigration policy is to make America look as distasteful as possible to anybody who's interested in coming here. You realize, if you go to the U.S., man, you're not going to be able to do that anymore. You won't be able to be yourself. You won't be able to enjoy your mother's words on the telephone, any number of things. But his immigration policy is make it look like America is not the place you really want to go. So even if you're running from the FARC or some other country that's a group that's trying to kill your kids, America is worse.
Well, the recent policy rollout of the fact that they want to make it illegal, a felony to have an undocumented person in your car for mixed status families. That is, and Congressman, I know you public relations wise, but excuse me, that's fucked up. I know you gotta be careful when you come on certain media, but here we cuss because it's the only way smart people can really express themselves properly. And the truth is that it's really fucked up that you could be a 17-year-old girl, your dad's teaching you how to drive, and because he's undocumented, or maybe he's in the process of getting his papers, they're just not finalized yet. You that's a felony. I mean, for crying out loud, it's exactly what the Nazis did when people were hiding Jews. And I don't like to make this equivalency to Nazis because it gets overused a lot in mainstream discourse. But like you said, Congressman, when we see fascism, we got to call it out. And Carlos, you're right. Democrats have gotten soft because there was a time where Democrats didn't teach Nazis lessons in humanity. We got teams of Jewish Americans to go over there, and if you ever seen Inglourious Basterds, you know what happens next.
Everybody gets scalped.
No, but yeah, I mean, for instance, what's going on with anti-Semitism is just wild, especially here in Central Florida. Like we had a synagogue that I forget the name of the group, but these guys who like travel the country and go and be, racist and anti-Semitic, and they just went in front of a synagogue and just yelling at kids, yelling at families, and they're just out there, and it's just not much. Like I was talking with the rabbi, and he was like, "What can we do?" And then I was like, thinking, and like obviously we went through talking about filing police report, restraining orders, all that. Um, but it's hard because these guys, they feel so emboldened because of the governor and Trump and just like this new atmosphere where they feel safe to go out in the street and spew that hate. Racists shouldn't feel safe to do that.
Well, I mean, the First Amendment has limitations. I mean, it was Oliver Wendell Holmes who once quoted the whole thing in regards to you can't say fire in a crowded theater,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. That you can't incite violence, you can't create words that will definitely hurt people, and yet there are folks out there at the upper echelons who are doing that and getting away with it. And we
Yeah.
have DOJ, who you can't actually see them moving unless you watch them in time lapse photography. I'm sorry, but that's just the way it is with our Attorney General right now. You need a strobe to be able to make certain he's actually moving at all.
Well, Gary, here's the interesting thing. Governor DeSantis's decisions to ban, Black history, to ban, anything to do with gender studies in the history of the LGBT rights movement, all that really boils down to eliminating people like Carlos, myself, and the congressman, millennials and Gen Zers who read the autobiography of Malcolm X, who were taught in schools, clearly that racial inequality is a struggle in this nation and has been for a long time. And the fact is that, to me, when I look back at it and I see these attacks, and like you just mentioned, people don't always respect your First Amendment. Well, that's what the Second Amendment is for. The Black Panthers didn't take no shit about defending their communities from white supremacy. And I think that it's sad, but synagogues may have to step up and do the same thing. People in America, have to arm themselves and protect their families and their communities.
I'm
And
with you, Kano. I think that's one thing that could work out in our favor is this permitless carry, even though there's going to be a lot of like insane people with guns that shouldn't have guns.
Oh, here's a question I wanted to ask
at
you,
least
Max.
minorities should
I'm
be
sorry,
able to pick
Congressman.
up some guns.
I did it again. Do you think that DeSantis's push for permitless carry is an abuse of the 14th Amendment?
Yeah. So for the conversation that we were just having right now.
Yeah, it's kind of a roundtable discussion, but then again, Carlos is kind of round, so.
And Congressman, we understand, your background, especially coming out of the Parkland shooting. Guns affect people very impactfully, but it's really hard to see violence and then remain a pacifist, and that's kind of where I'm at right now, and I'm upset. So I don't want to take it away that I'll take anything away from the work that you've done in advocating to protect kids. Yeah.
No, I don't feel that way at all. I mean, look, I believe that people should have the ability to own a gun, right? And it's in our Constitution. What I fight for is common sense gun reform, so guns don't get in the wrong hands. So I think the permitless carry is really dangerous, but I understand what the connection you're making. During the Black Lives Matter protests, we a lot of the organizers that organized with went and got their permits to carry and everything, because there were times where we went on protests and there were white supremacists who came up and started beating us up, and they were armed and people were scared. And that's what happens. It's a cycle. That's why I always say one of the biggest ways we're going to rid this nation of gun violence is obviously, yes, making sure guns don't get in the wrong hands, but also upping the standard of living in this country so people don't feel the need to use a gun to solve their problems in the first place. And that's really, I think that's the key. In terms of the 14th Amendment, yeah. I mean, look, when we talk about this law, we've seen it's in many other states right now, and we see that there are a lot of problems that stem from it, not from the people who are feel responsible and this and that, but it's from the folks who the scary part of this is I've been saying I feel like I'd rather open carry without a permit than conceal carry without a permit because no one knows. I mean, like you don't know who's packing, and the fact that people can be packing in public spaces and in different areas, theaters, etc., is concerning to me because there's a lot of BS, right? And there's a lot, for instance, the gun violence that I survived it was not a mass shooting. It was downtown Orlando, Halloween, two guys, what do you call it? Two guys getting in an argument, and one of them had a gun and started shooting, and I happened to be right next to it, and that was what happened. And things like that will continue to happen, especially as people are deprived of the resources that they need to live their lives. So I tend to not believe that the answer is more guns, but I don't believe everyone should just be disarmed or anything.
Yeah.
I mean, I was unlucky enough to be involved in 2 riots in my lifetime. Back in 1967 in Detroit, and in 97 in Cincinnati, where I was just out there doing my job, and all of a sudden I was stuck in the middle of a riot where bricks were being thrown and windows were being broken and mobs were just racing through the streets. Not a single gunshot went off, but a lot of people got hurt. And so it's not just guns that can be violent; it can just be people that are violent that is the issue, and we have to find some way to find a way to de-escalate. But we're not de-escalating. It seems we're revving people up. We're giving them reasons to come out there and carry. I was at the Strawberry Festival in Plant City a couple of days last week, and I had to wait a half hour to get in because somebody was trying to sneak in 4 guns. And he had one in each front pocket, one in the back of his pants, and one in his boot. And he refused to leave the fair unless he's able to carry his guns into the fair. It's like what the Oak Ridge Boys are performing at. You going to shoot them if they don't play the song you like? I mean, what is the reason for carrying 4 guns? I don't understand it. But there are plenty of reasons why you might want to have a gun. I don't see going to a strawberry festival is one of them.
Well, Gary, let's talk. I know the congressman doesn't have a lot of time, but let's pivot to our audience and the folks we represent.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about weed.
Well, they're trying to expand gun rights, to open carry, but yet medical marijuana patients are still denied their right to protect themselves, their home, and their medicine. Congressman, the Schedule 1 status of cannabis is still creating a lot of problems. And now that the leadership in the House has changed over to the opposing party, we feel as though, with prohibitionists like Jim Jordan on key committees, we're not going to see any movement through the House. How do you feel about, one, should cannabis users lose their Second Amendment right? And 2, what's the outlook over the next 2 years with the other party controlling things, especially with prohibitionists on key committees?
Yeah, no, this is a great question. No, I don't think cannabis users should lose any of their rights. I think I'm optimistic about the fight and journey and the legalization of cannabis over the next decade, just as we see what's been happening in a lot of different states. But obviously, the push and pull at the federal level, it's going to be difficult. The Congress, number one, is super divided. I think what we're seeing is this rise in this far right, like Freedom Caucus, is very concerning in general for every issue. But on marijuana, it seems like they might be in a better spot, and I think like there might be opportunities to have very unlikely coalitions come together around this. And in the United States Congress, the problem is the way this type of legislation will turn out. And obviously, on my side of things, and we want to see cannabis legalized. We want to see it recreational, but we also, in the same bill, want to see the gains from that really going towards communities that suffered the most from the war on drugs. And that's where there will be a difference with folks on the far right on it, who and folks who are more libertarian who are for the legalization of marijuana. So there'll be another probably struggle within the struggle, but that's politics, and I think we'll get a good place. For Florida, I think folks should really pay attention and do everything they can to get this on the ballot in 24, which it seems like it might be on the ballot. We're waiting to see. Same thing with abortion rights. I think if we're able to have abortion rights and recreational marijuana on the ballot in 2024, I think we're going to have really good turnout.
Well,
we have difficulty in Tallahassee. They like, for instance, when it comes to social equity programs, they consider that diversion of funds. They consider that a bad use of taxpayer dollars because it gives special rights to certain groups. Now, I grant you, certain groups require certain additional funds to be able to meet the expectations of their own everybody else. But what do you see that as a confliction that you have on the federal government level as well?
Yeah, I mean, we see that happening right now. This whole discussion around the debt ceiling, and the Freedom Caucus came out and said there should be no deal unless there are major cuts. And there, the president got all the Republicans to stand to be Medicare and Medicaid and not cutting, which was great. But now they got a lot of other things in their targets, right? SNAP benefits is a big one. I'm trying to tell everyone to pay attention to the fight on SNAP, because they're coming for SNAP in a really big way. They're coming for food stamps in a big way. And that is really unfortunate. Food stamps are one of the single most effective government programs that there is in terms of helping people in their day-to-day life, showing people that government works for them. People have already seen reductions in their SNAP benefits and their checks, because a lot of that money was pumped up during the pandemic, and now it's starting to run out. And so now people are starting to see, low amount of money. A lot of seniors are seeing $20 food checks, which is what do you do with that these days? So either way, what I'm trying to get to is we have a party that is increasingly focused on cutting spending, but the spending they want to cut has nothing to do with our inflated Pentagon budget that is, much more than every other major country in the world combined. They don't want to talk about corporate welfare, where we send ungodly amounts of money to already big businesses to spur business. They want to talk about the senior who's on food stamps, or the single mom who is, getting some rental assistance. And unfortunately, and I just don't see I think that when we talk about Democrats, we just have a lot of work to do in connecting these things together, because that's actually what's happening.
Well, Congressman, I'm glad you brought that up, because the narrative from the Republican Party since the Reagan administration has been to attack the single brown bomb on food stamps. It's not the seniors, right? It's not our grandparents whose Social Security checks got them living paycheck to paycheck. The ones who have reverse mortgages, who need that little extra, supplement. The ones who are getting Meals on Wheels. That's not the narrative, and that's not who they want to attack, because that's also a base of their voters. And that's you're right. We got to change the narrative. We have to make sure that there are real faces, being put up and in front of people being hurt by these policies that these people espouse. I mean, one of the issues they want to talk about inflation, supply chain issues, blaming it on the president, but the antiquated marijuana testing policies that we have, with now 40 states having some level of legalization, and only
Kentucky.
Yeah, and only 19 states, that are still behind in actually making things happen on a medical level of a respectable manner. All in all, these issues that are exacerbated by policies that need to change. Yeah. And so, this Schedule 1 status, I find it ironic that you say that. You and the squad might have to make a deal with the Freedom Caucus to push this, because the mainstreams in both parties just can't get it together. And the sad part is that, to me, you are mainstream, right? Like, we talk about this in other countries. We don't have a left in this nation. We have center left folks, because I've worked with exchange organizers from Denmark, and the fact that even bringing up the fact owning a gun, they're like, oh my God, you own guns, and how do you call yourself a liberal? And I'm like, if you lived in this country long enough, you'd want to own a gun too,
Yeah, no, I mean, it's just to kind of wrap up. I was just in Japan I did a legislative exchange, and so I got to meet make a lot of good friends who are part of the Japanese National Diet, which is their Congress. And we just sat down for dinner, and they're asking me about American politics. I talk with them about guns. The police don't have guns in Japan. There's no gun violence. And so they're just like, they don't understand. And there was a shooting in my district while I was in Japan, and I had to spend, I had to kind of step away for a good amount of the day to deal with it. And I came back and I was like, yeah, we had a 9-year-old killed. We had a 20-year-old, 20-something-year-old news reporter killed covering the shooting of the 9-year-old. And they just didn't understand it. They didn't like it was hard to understand. And then I started talking about super PACs. Oh my God, they couldn't understand that at all. Like, it was just like, what? Corporations can flood unlimited amounts of money into electing people? It's like, yeah, that's something we have. So either way, we have so much work to do. We have a lot of catch up to do. And that's why I think a lot of people are scared of any kind of like left or right or like, you know what I mean, kind of policies in the messaging frame, but they like the policy itself. And I think like that's why I've been focusing on just like I try not to be partisan when I talk with people in the community or when we do our communications, and I try to just focus on the policies themselves and the story of the policy. And that's the thing, we can't be all policy wonks, right? With like normal working class people just trying to live their lives. It's just about telling the story of the policy. How does that policy, how's it going to change and help your life? What does it mean for us as a society? And I think that's what I do, and I'm not saying I know everything, but I just feel like that's what we should all be looking at. How do we connect everything to this greater working class and the growing working poor? How do these policies help every single one of us? And that's my politics.
Well, I thought it was amazing that they sent you off to Japan. I mean, you just barely got out of orientation. All of a sudden, they got you on a plane and took you across the Pacific. And I
Yeah.
just thought that you were so impactful in that first committee, especially with that lady in regards to Twitter and all that. But we don't know exactly what she said because most of it was bleeped out. But I thought, oh boy, this guy is so on top of things like Katie Porter that they're going to probably ship him off someplace to do some ambassadorial thing. And there you were in Japan. So
Yeah, it was pretty crazy.
congratulations on making an impact. We always like to put a little bit of educational thing to the people we are in here today. And I heard you use the word recreational a lot. We would like to see, if at all possible, people start using the word adult use. That is because the fact that recreational is something that heroin is. And opiates are when they're used improperly. And there was something that came up in California back in the 1990s, basically to stop full legalization from happening. So if you can get I know I've already got Blumenauer on track with that. But if you could use the word adult use more often, I think our message will come that much farther. And I could honestly say I had an impact in Washington, D.C.
Congressman, you are welcome on this show anytime. Anytime you want to join us, we really appreciate you coming on and being a part of it and just sharing with our listeners and the general public, everything that's going on. And we support you 100%. Keep doing the great work that you're doing for us in Washington.
Thank you so much. I appreciate y'all.
Oh, you have a few seconds for my question?
What
Yeah,
happened?
the question that must be answered?
Oh, okay.
Hold on a second. Go ahead, real quickly. Okay, now you're heading off. Go ahead. Oh, is that me? Okay. Yeah, you're heading off to Sarasota today. And so there's a certain group of people that are very staunch about a particular topic out that way. So I have to ask you a quick question. Which is which preferred, Remo or Evans? Because you must know that the Barnum and Bailey Circus, the drumheads there must be Remo according to corporate policy. So should it be Remo or should it be Evans? And you always use Zildjian for the crash.
What is going on right now? I'm so confused.
I have no clue what Gary's talking about.
I use Remo heads. I use Remo heads.
Then you'll be good in Sarasota.
There we go. I
Congressman.
appreciate y'all having me on.
Safe travels, Congressman. Well, Carlos, I think it's time for the news, my friend.
What is Remo? What is that?
It's a drum head.
It's a drum head?
The man's a drummer.
Oh.
Okay. Gary's speaking that musician jargon. We're not musicians, Gary.
I think it's
the article in Teen Vogue. It
it's
shows him playing the drums.
Gary, the fact that you're reading Teen Vogue is killing me because me and Carlos are so pop culturally like distant right now.
it's time for the news.
still wonder who that guy is in the photo.
All right. So look, just to bring the normal news to folks and keeping it up, according to data published in the journal Addiction, there is no uptick in traffic-related hospitalizations following marijuana legalization. And
I
so,
always said I'd drive better when I'm high.
well, this was something.
I always leave the road when you're high.
Canada legalized adult use.
Yep.
Across the country, and so they published a study called "The Effect of Recreational Cannabis Legalization on the Rates of Traffic Injury in Canada." And so, because recently I've had a debate with Barney Bishop in front of the Tiger Bay Political Club, and he's a lobbyist for the private prison industry, and he took the anti-approach to a lot of what we said. And one of the key talking points from the opposition is, what about people driving high and getting into car accidents? And the data just goes against it. It's not scientific to say those things. And so I just wanted to make sure that people are aware of that. And furthermore, I think when we talk about normalizing cannabis and passing adult use, it really does fall on those who are cannabis users to also be honest about their use, because looking at data published in the American Journal of Preventative Medicine between 2013 and 2020, the percentage of Americans acknowledging medical cannabis use has doubled. And so there are more people today, based on the 2020 census, that percentage calculates to about 8.3 million people acknowledging that they're utilizing medical cannabis. Now, we know there are far more people who use it for medical purposes that are not reporting because of their jobs or whatever reasons that they may have to not. But, especially for our veterans and for seniors, people who it may not affect their livelihood as much, it is vital that you communicate with your doctors that you are utilizing cannabis, one, for your own safety and treatment regimen, but two, so that way doctors are well more educated, because that definitely is a block that has a lot of division right now across this country as to whether or not cannabis is a healthy alternative. But, that strikes in comparison, as Gary has pointed out on multiple episodes, of the way they treat things in Israel, where doctors utilize cannabis even in the hospital setting. And in here, if you brought cannabis into a hospital, they send the goon squad to arrest you. And that's just a damn shame.
Or they take your medicine away and you die of Parkinson's.
Yeah. And so, when Gary, I'm glad you brought up Parkinson's, because the next news that I wanted to bring up is that according to observational trial data published in the Journal of Clinical Medicine, plant-derived cannabis oils are effective for symptom management in older patients with treatment-resistant neurological diseases, such as Parkinson's, peripheral neuropathy, multiple sclerosis. And people who are 65 and up suffering from these have the greatest overall benefits from cannabis therapy.
That's what I'm saying. We can learn from Michael J. Fox on this one.
I did not know he uses.
He was famous for one time during a news report. Like, he was like being interviewed about his medical marijuana, and he's showing RSO oil, and he's like, "This is Rick Simpson oil. It's not pine nut oil." Like, for some reason that caught the eye of the press. It's not pine nut oil. It's Rick Simpson oil. Yeah, but he's been utilizing it for some time for his Parkinson's.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah, and I think we need to also bring up another elephant in the room, because I hate to say it, guys, but there is a truly wolf in the hemp house.
I was gonna say, Gary, elephant in the room. Are you talking about my weight? I'm sensitive about that.
No. It's that's all the damn
gained some weight
pastrami
myself.
you put
That's
in your
fucked up,
Cuban
Gary.
sandwiches.
Yeah, that's fucked up, Gary.
But Carlos, you gain weight because you're a vegan and these cupcakes.
So what's the elephant in the room if it's not our fat asses?
Well, it happens to be a bill 1635 on the Senate side, and there's also a House version. And the Senate bill is coming in front of its first committee on Monday at 3:30 in the Senate in room 301. And that is because of the fact that Colleen Burton, who is the sponsor of that bill, also happens to be the chair of that committee. So it got onto that committee early, because it has only 2 committees in the Senate and 3 committees in the House. Usually they will go through all the committees, and the more committees you have, the harder it is to get through.
Yeah.
But they can, under the rules, after it passes even just one committee, get forwarded immediately to the House. So we need to be very carefully looking at this. It was disguised as a bill which strictly says that hemp is actually a consumable food, and therefore under the venue of the Department of Agriculture, but within its definitions sessions, like for instance, and when it talks about edibles, it mentions the fact you can't have any more than 0.5 milligrams in the edible of wet weight, which means all the gummies, all the chocolates, all the edibles that are made out of Delta 8, Delta 10, gone. Every single one of them. And tinctures as well. Because it talks about the fact that it's synthesized when you go ahead and concentrate the cannabinoids in the substance. So with those definitions, they can easily ban every single hemp derived cannabinoid out there. That's a product that people utilize when they can't afford the doctor, when they can't afford going to the MSOs. And we just happen to have heavy duty sponsorship of this bill coming from particular MSOs in Florida, as well as other groups that are actually more prohibitionist than anything else.
And Gary, let's be clear. This is not just a Florida issue. This is a boilerplate bill. This is a bill that is essentially been drawn up, circulated across the desk of multiple legislators in multiple states, whether that be Arizona, whether that be Virginia. In Virginia, they actually passed this. And so the concern is that does passing this bill put people like Carlos out of business? And that is a major concern for business owners like Carlos and tons of other over 9,000 other hemp businesses. So if you think about it, you have 22 MMTCs in Florida, and a lot of them are looking at their bottom line. They're not looking at quality of product. They're not looking at caring about patient outcomes. They're worried about making money. And so when you pick shareholders versus patients, they're always going to pick the shareholders. And so patients are looking at, well, this place produces booth. I don't want to spend it. I got to get all these doctor recommendations. Oh, Carlos has a spot that I can get products that give me relief and help me out, and I don't have to go through all those other issues. And that undercuts into the bottom line of these MMTCs, which is why these 9,000 hemp businesses need to pull together. They need, if you have a hemp business, if you have family in the hemp business, flooding the room on Monday in the Senate is going to be vital. Signing up for public testimony is going to be vital. Tell them, one, the definitions are unscientific. And two, they have no business making this a legislative issue when it's a regulatory one. The Department of Agriculture is already empowered to pull bad products off shelves. They're already empowered to go out there and regulate it. Carlos, share with the listeners how the Department of Agriculture has already been in your pockets and in your shelves without this legislation.
Yeah, like you're saying, it's the Department of Agriculture has actually done a pretty good job of coming in here, testing our flour. They've found flour before with high levels of lead. They've they do come in here, and I don't know if it's particularly because it's my store or but they're in here quite often.
They come for the ambiance.
And they're in here at least 2-3 times a year, testing everything, checking everything out, looking at products. It really is it's horrible to see these bills come out, because a lot of the arguments for why people say we need them is just unjust. It, like they're saying kids are getting a hold of this stuff. We don't sell to kids. They're saying that there could be harmful products and whatnot, but the Department of Agriculture has put in so much work in order to make sure that they regulate this properly. There could be bad actors out there. There could be inspectors that don't know what they're doing. But quite honestly, I think this just basically has to do with people that just refuse to get a hemp license, don't even know that they need to get a hemp license, don't know that they should be regulated here. And it's just a misstep because the Department of Agriculture just hasn't had any money in order to do these things.
Oh, I'm glad you brought that up. Under the previous administration of Nikki Fried, the Florida legislature did not give her any dollars for hemp enforcement. So her department had to cannibalize funding from other sources in order to even create the hemp enforcement measures that have taken products off your shelves. So, if anything, Colleen Burton should get her shit together and be funding Wilton Simpson's office to actually go regulate things, not cracking down on you all. What I've seen is that when a policy is bad, when a policy has no other excuse, if you will, or validation politically, they always go to, we're trying to save the children. And I've heard those words come out of the mouths of folks who actually work for these MSOs. Yeah. What about the children? Let's save the children. Well, look, the number one cause of death right now in children in America is bullets. It's not drag queens reading to them. It's not marijuana. It's not hemp products. It's bullets. And somehow they want to put more bullets without regulation on the streets. So help me out with that one, Florida Republican Party. Now, again, when it comes to the news and Republicans doing good, I don't want to shit on Republicans when they're all just doing bad. In North Dakota, which is a Republican state dominated by Republican majorities, members of the State House, State Senate have approved legislation that increase the quantity of THC containing products that patients may legally possess at any given time. They've upped it from 4,000 milligrams in a 30-day period to 6,000 milligrams in a 30-day period.
Nice.
Now, Carlos, you're a medical marijuana patient in Florida. How many milligrams do they give you in a 30-day period?
To be honest with you, I was supposed to renew my card, and because I get such shitty milligrams, I haven't renewed it.
There you go. So
Right.
again, people being pushed out of the legal regulated market because of overregulation, high costs to participate in the market. These are the issues. How come medical marijuana cards aren't free for veterans, aren't free for people who are disabled? How come they're not paid on a sliding scale of income? Why do you have to be in the middle class in order to be able to afford legal weed? And then when you can't afford it and you can't get access to it, you're getting access to this booth that they're selling in these MSOs. It's sad. It's very
Now, you should know the schedule for the Senate this next Monday for this bill, because numerically it is the last bill on the agenda. That means that gives them an opportunity to reduce the amount of time that you may be able to speak down from the 3 minutes people normally get, maybe down to as little as 15 seconds I've seen. By the time you introduce yourself, it's time to leave. So by all means, prior to that meeting, contact your legislator and contact the bill sponsors and tell them about the impact that this bill will have, either on the business that you own or just out of your own pocketbook. And because back there's products in here that are actually working for you that you're not going to have access to. And that in and of itself is a crime that they would be perpetuating.
And Gary, this is being heard in the Fiscal Policy Committee in the Senate, correct?
Agriculture first.
Agriculture. So this is being held in the Ag Committee?
Ag Committee is the first committee, yeah, and that is the one that our senator for this building right here, Senator Rusan, is involved in. So, Senator Rusan.
So,
it's
Senator,
like a temper lay here. That's
if I'm not mistaken, Senator Jay Collins is the chair of the Ag Committee in the Senate.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, Collins and Byrd.
So Senator Collins is actually our state senator from Tampa. He's a veteran. If you are a veteran, if you have a hemp business in the Tampa Bay area, I encourage you to contact Senator Collins' office between now and Monday morning, and keep those phone lines hot. Drop those voicemails, send those emails. Make sure that you're engaging him and letting him know. I mean, and then again, this is going to be, Senator Burton's chair of the Fiscal Policy Committee. When this gets heard there, if you want to talk about fiscal policy, talk about how 9,000 small business owners could be put out of business by this bill. And in the grand scheme of things, I will never sacrifice 9,000 small businesses for the sake of 22 businesses that are part of a cartel.
We are 9,000 businesses. Multiply that by the number of employees each of those has, and multiply that by the number of taxes they pay into the system, because this stuff is taxable and it does go towards the state or go to local facilities, depending on what you have. And these are the people on the agriculture committee. We got Jay Collins on the top. We got Jim Boyd as the vice chair. Then we have Dennis Baxley, Senator Lori Berman, Senator Aaron Grail, Senator Debbie Mayfield, Senator Irvin, Daryl Irvin Rusan, Senator Corey Simon, and Senator Jerry Thompson, whom we spoke to over in Tallahassee, and who was very much in favor of making sure that things like this don't happen and that things get moved forward.
Well, Carlos, how many people do you employ?
About 8.
8. So if this bill passes and puts you out of business, we're looking at 9 people no longer gainfully employed, include yourself. We're looking at, a small business which has really revitalized a key part of 7th Avenue going away. I mean, the economic impacts of just your business alone will shake up, our own hometown.
We're talking 81,000 people out of that.
So, in all of this, we definitely have a lot of work to do in protecting consumers, protecting business owners, and so this is a bad bill that needs to die. I am going to make an open call right now, publicly, to any MSO out there and to any of the MMTCs in Florida. If you will be our allies in killing this bill, we can work together. But if you continue to support pushing this, or rather, you choose neutrality in this fight, I'm going to quote Malcolm X: choosing neutrality in a time of oppression is to choose the side of the oppressor. And so that's a major problem for us. We will not forgive you for this. The public will not forgive you for this. And so all of you listening out there, whether you sell True Booth or Cura Buds, kiss my butt. You got to get out there and support us. And if you're not, there will be ramifications of this.
Now, Kentucky, of all people, this last week approved medical cannabis. And so, Mitch, if you're listening, get your head out of your shell. I know your back is hurting, but there's a solution for that. And it won't get you addicted either. Because I know you got hurt, but heck, you sponsored the damn hemp bill. So this is your work they're trying to undo.
Well, it's sad, Gary, that so often in our political system, we have to undo the work that politicians do when they finally have a come to Jesus moment. And that really does bother me on so many levels. I've seen it with Charlie Crist running for office these last 2 times for governor. And I'm like, man, you got to get elected governor to undo all the bad shit you did when you were governor, on top of all the bad shit DeSantis and Scott have done. And so that's a major problem. We got to stop. For every 2 steps forward, we have to take a step back in our political system. It's such a hamper to progress. And here's the biggest thing: prohibition has always had a racist counterpart to it. Right? They pushed prohibition because they wanted to attack immigrants. They pushed prohibition because they wanted to criminalize African Americans who were fighting for civil rights. They pushed prohibition because they wanted to criminalize, anti-war, anti-military industrial complex hippies, as dangerous marijuana users. And the fact is that a recent study coming out of the Journal of the American Medical Association, Network Open, showed that Black newborns are more likely to undergo drug testing than any other babies, according to this data. They went ahead and assessed, the University of Michigan researchers assessed 26,000 newborn children, and they found that Black children are nearly 4 times drug tested at the rate of other children. And these are unrelated to obstetrical risk. What it is that they are doing their damnedest to break up the Black family as soon as these kids are born, or even in utero. We've seen women in Alabama, Louisiana, being charged with child neglect. And basically the government's there with a catcher's mitt ready to take that baby as soon as they come out the womb for cannabis use. When in fact, cannabis use has been shown in multiple studies to be helpful for the treatment of intractable morning sicknesses, for the pain that people experience, and even in some cases to help with miscarriages. And so there is a lot of major research that needs to be done when it comes to the benefits of cannabis in utero. And we always point to that 30-year longitudinal study in Jamaica, which showed that a lot of times the kids who had cannabis in utero came out with better motor skills than the ones who didn't. And so the fact is there is scientific research out there, and that's the final frontier for the prohibitionists is what about the children? And if we can dispel going all the way back to the womb that cannabis is not harmful to these children and to the development, they really lose all their talking points. They have nothing else. We've already debunked the traffic fatalities. We've already debunked the gateway theory. What about the children is the last thing that they have left? Because it's not like cannabis increases gun violence. They don't even want potheads to have guns. So,
utilizing racism is not a new tactic, even without talking about cannabis. Like, for instance, the first laws against opiates were there to basically, although they wanted to reduce the number of opiates in the population, they used the Chinese as a scapegoat because opium was a problem in China at the time, and they created the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1848, which basically prevented any Chinese people from emulating back to the United States, saying that they were bringing opium, they brought drugs, they had the rapists. There's some good people, I believe, but that is how it went. That is just how it went down. And when it came to cannabis, they said, "Hey, look at that. We can do that again." And that's exactly how the prohibition came in. Racism equals their own kind of justice. Now, one thing I wanted to discuss with Max, and we didn't have time today, because he's very big on regards to affordable housing. We have a public use law here in this state, which basically states, it's not an unusual clause, I see it across the country, but that you have to be in a home that you own or that your landlord allows you to utilize it. Now, what if you are a person who needs medical cannabis? You are a renter. You cannot afford the rent right now, so you're homeless. You have zero place to smoke, no matter where you are. If you have a medical card, and even if you have your own medicine, you can no longer smoke it anywhere. Not on transportation, not even in jail after you get arrested, of course, naturally. But the fact is, that is preventing you. At that point in time, this whole concept of public use can only be in places where you own or the landlord gives you permission, becomes a racist rule as well.
Well, Gary, you're absolutely right. It's racist, it's classist, it's egregious. The overall fact is that there are states like New York where they allow you to smoke cannabis anywhere you can smoke a cigarette. There here in Maryland, they just passed their implementation bill through their House, and it prevents landlords from discriminating against cannabis use. There are social use lounges now popping up in Nevada, in Colorado, and in Maryland, where patients can have a safe haven to essentially utilize cannabis. And so these are the policies that we need Florida legislators to be paying attention to. The fact is that we still don't have employment protections in Florida for medical marijuana patients. But you want to talk to me about drag queens. We still don't have protections where people are getting kicked off the organ transplant list in Florida for being medical marijuana patients or losing their professional licenses. But yet you want to talk to me about how diversity programs are bad for this state. There are so many distracting red herrings in all of this. I recently read a bill that there's a Republican legislature in Florida who wants to outlaw girls talking about their periods in school. Now, I'm sorry, but if as an old ass white man, if you're worrying about 13-year-old girls talking about your periods, you sound like a pervert to me.
We just entered to that church down the street from us. What was it called? Our Lady of Heavy Menstrual Periods. I think we need to go ahead and send them over there and get some churching.
Look, Gary, you know me. I've been a lapsed Catholic most of my whole life. Carlos is now an atheist, but I tell you, it's the guys dressed up as wizards who abuse more children than drag queens have.
And by the way, if you're atheist and you want to have a come to Jesus moment, we have an option for you. You can have a come to Carlos moment. I think it's only fair, and you can come to 1714 East 7th Avenue in Ybor City, where it all began. Just in case we didn't throw the address in there at the beginning of the show that I missed.
Thank you, Gary.
You're welcome. I had to throw that in there.
The plug.
Well, we have to.
This honestly,
sponsor, so
honestly is part of what Congressman Frost was talking about before. Because what are Democrats doing to combat this? Right? Isn't there some legislator in Broward County that wrote a bill so that dogs couldn't stick their head out of windows?
Oh, that was Lauren Book. That's a leader in the Democratic Party. Kiss my ass, Lauren.
How are you
worried about that?
And apparently these legislators, they have a certain amount of bills that they could put forth. So this is your one chance. Come on,
well, the Senate can do as many bills as they want. So yeah.
All right.
But every once in a while,
Carlos, because when Tony Hill was a senator from Jacksonville, I was an intern in 2009, and I gave him shit because he had a bill to outlaw pit bulls. And I have American bulldogs; they're not pit bulls. But the fact that you can't, that one, cops aren't smart enough to distinguish between breeds, and two, I shouldn't live in a society where I have to show papers for what my dog's breed is because you're out here wasting our time outlawing America's most popular dog breed. You want to outlaw dangerous dogs, outlaw them fucking Chihuahuas and Yorkies. Those bite more people on average than pit bulls and other bully breeds do.
Now we have a couple of bills that were already filed in basically the employee protection bill, which is hopefully moving forward. We'll see how it goes at this point in time. Other bills, although they may not have gotten filed, because they were left in the orphan bin. They can be used as amendments on other bills that are moving forward, and we plan on working with with the legislators that have bills that are moving forward that you can connect them to. So if you'd like to become involved in this and help shape the zeitgeist of the Florida cannabis program, both medical, hopefully adult use in the future, and currently the hemp program, come join us, and we will help you be a part of the change. If you go to suncoastnormal.org, you can become a member of Suncoast Normal. You get one of these glittering Canadian flag pins here that will make all sorts of new conversations pop
It's a
up for you
maple
over when you
leaf.
go to Publix, and it lets people know that you were on the side of the plant that has healed millions over thousands of years.
You know, I just want to put an open call out there to all legislators, whether you're Republican or Democrat. Right now, this session, you can actually make a difference in the lives of sick patients in this state by passing workplace protections, by passing an amendment onto these bills that will protect people from getting kicked off an organ transplant list, that will protect parental rights, so that the fact that you're a medical marijuana patient or that you use cannabis in general is not used against you in custody hearings and used against you to take away your children. There are so many other great bills that we've worked with, whether it's to create, cultivation centers in consumption lounges. There are so many other things that the Florida legislature can be doing to improve the lives of people now, right now, this session. You legislators have it in your power. And if you cannot pivot away from these sickening culture wars that are dividing this country and come together around this issue, which regardless if you're a libertarian, if you're a communist, if you're a socialist, if you're a progressive, if you're a conservative, if you're Republican, if you're Democrat, everyone across the political spectrum, across majorities of every single political affiliation, all agree that cannabis should be legal, that the racist legacy of prohibition should end, and every hardworking American should have a right to utilize cannabis whether they want to or not. And they should be able to do that in a safe, affordable manner. And it shouldn't require that you end up, being someone who has to make six figures a year to participate in the system. And so I'm asking you, step up to the plate now and be the public officials that we elected you to be.
And Speaker Renner and President Pasadomo, first off, thank you, President Pasadomo, for agreeing that kids under the age of 21, between 18 and 21, should not own high-powered rifles. I appreciate the thought on that, because that is sensible. And but we want you guys on the show. If you, I don't think you're going to come. I'm defying you to come on the show. But if you don't, we would like to talk to you directly in person. You can have an aide there, but don't have the aide there and you not be there, because you're the people we need to talk to you directly. Because if you want to see the look on your face when we talk about these things, so we know that the point is coming home, so we know that we're making that empathic link, lets people realize that this is an important issue. We are not kidding around. We're not joking around, although we do joke around a lot. And these are not, even though we may throw out a lot of puns, it's because of the fact we're all in pain.
Yes. And, remember, all politics is local. And to that being said, we're right now in the height of the runoff elections in the city of Tampa. I just want to give a shout out. The fact that every candidate that came on the rotation has advanced to the runoffs really does show, one, the impact that this show can have on our community, and two, the impact that you can make as a candidate or elected official coming on our show and really being able to advance forward and people getting to, see where you're at. Now, I would say this much. I've had a recent tiff over one of the candidates and their stance on whether or not our our civilian review board, our police review board should have subpoena power. And I'll say this much. If you are not in favor of police accountability in the city of Tampa, if you are all about allowing Mayor Castor to continue to rubber stamp police misconduct with a civilian review board of her choosing that has no teeth and no power, you're not the right candidate for us. So if you have an issue with it, I would say that you should change your stance rather than expecting the public to get behind you on having a shitty public policy stance.
Wait, it was somebody that was on this show?
Yeah, it was the last candidate that we had on. Yes, it was been Hoyt Prindle, who's running against Charlie Miranda. And he basically defended himself saying, well, I'm a little bit better on marijuana than Charlie, and I'm a little bit better on these issues. I'm like, that's like saying Chick-fil-A nuggets are better than McDonald's nuggets, even though we know they're both bad for you.
Charlie Moran has been on the council since before I even got here.
1972, if I'm not mistaken, and I would say this much. Look, there's this saying, go with the devil, Again, Hoyt, I'm putting an open call to you. Change your stance on having subpoena power for the Civilian Review Board. If you can't have a spine now, how can we trust you to have a spine when Jane Castor steps up to the plate with another bad policy? You cannot be aligned with the mayor on this issue. You have to be for police accountability if you want our support and you want to have the continued support of our community.
And to be honest with you, as a former police chief, our mayor should be in favor of police accountability, because that kind of transparency proves that you have trust, the full trust and faith of your law enforcement.
Gary, Jane Castor has never been for police accountability. I can speak to this personally. When she first got appointed police chief, I was running for office.
And I started something.
And it was 2009. I went to a Hillsborough County LGBTQ caucus event. Jane Castor was the guest speaker that night. And I asked her, what are you going to do to root out bad cops in the department and hold bad cops accountable? And her response to me in a crowded room was, I don't have any bad cops. And since 2009, I promise you, there are tons of articles in the now defunct Tampa Tribune and in the Tampa Bay Times that show that we have a corrupt, what is it, DUI squad. We had a whole ring of cops committing food stamp fraud. In my own case, we've had cops lie on police reports to up misdemeanor marijuana charges to felony charges. Gary, you've seen it in people lives that you've seen falsified police reports and such. It is sad, but there is essentially this competitive, sales-driven culture for police interactions at the Tampa Police Department. This quota culture that they have, where they're trying to up the numbers. And it is sad that a function of society, which is meant to protect people, has this type of culture. And then when we try to have police accountability, the mayor and the powers that be are preventing that from happening. What I like to see is a civilian review board with its own independent attorney, the ability to have subpoena power, and the ability for citizens who are wronged by the police to go to this board and say, hey, this happened to me on this date by these cops, and I need it addressed. And until we get to that level in our own hometown, we're not going to accomplish and move forward anywhere. We got to address things here at home first. And I like to see that addressed by this next group of city council candidates running for office. So again, if you're running for city council, I invite you. You also have an open invitation to come back now on the show between now and the city council elections at the end of April. But all in all, police accountability is going to remain a priority for this organization.
I don't see the QR code up there today for the Patreon. Did that disappear? Or
I guess I just forgot to put it up.
The QR code, please come by. Okay.
No, that QR code is the pardon application. This QR code is to become a member. Carlos, flip that other one real quick. If you are, there it is. If you are someone who is affected by federal cannabis charges, this is the pardon application that President Biden had been promising way back in October. So you can scan that QR code now. You can pause the video and scan it. That will take to the application. But Carlos, if you'll pull up the next one, this is the one Gary's talking about. This is to become a member of Suncoast Normal. Again, we're getting ready to launch a membership drive over the next 2 months. So starting April 1st, we're going to have some amazing prizes coming out if you can donate to Suncoast Normal, if you sign up to become a member. But in the meantime, please sign up now, support us, continue to do what you're doing. If you're not going to sign up now, then by all means, feel free to wait till April 1st till we roll out the amazing prize packages for our spring membership drive. But again, we want to make sure that folks are signing up and continue to support the great work that we do. This is the largest and most influential chapter of Normal in the state of Florida, and we're only as strong as our membership. We're only as strong as you wanting to donate and invest your time, your treasure, and your talents.
Now, remember, guys, the whole concept of the shotgun actually came from Vietnam, when soldiers used to take the barrel off their guns and use that to shoot somebody ahead of cannabis over there in Vietnam. So support our military. allow people to have guns, if only just
Yeah.
to turn them into pipe.
Go watch the movie Platoon. You can see Willem Dafoe
Yeah,
give
there you go.
Charlie Sheen a shotgun hit.
I got the congressman got a little uncomfortable when I was like, all minorities should buy guns now.
Well, that's why I had to say, like, hey man, look, we support the work that you're doing, but I want you to understand is like, if my family feels threatened, I believe the term is "fuck around and find out." And
Wasn't like the gun controls started like I need to look up these facts, but or if they're facts or whatnot. But
I made them up as I go along.
did gun control start
GOP
with Ronald
thing.
Reagan? Like did Ronald Reagan say that we need to we can't have everybody having guns when the
no.
Panthers
What happened was Ronald Reagan. Someone tried to assassinate Reagan, and I believe it was Brady.
Brady.
Gotten away,
Huh.
and took and became paralyzed after that. And essentially the Reagan administration, all the way through the W. Bush administration. So Reagan, Bush's daddy, and Clinton had a ban on what they considered assault rifles. That was lifted during the GW administration, and then since then, mass shootings have gone up 214%.
I'm pretty sure that Ronald
There
Reagan
could be a connection there.
I'm pretty sure that Ronald Reagan started a whole gun control thing when the Black Panthers went to the state capitol,
Yes,
California,
in the 60s.
with
If only Kanye was there to speak for them.
Yes.
It's time for us to end our conversation, but you should not stop that conversation. So what we're going to do is we're going to pass this rotation to you, and you continue it at home. So here you go, guys.
See you next week.
All right, bye.